The place card had my name printed in pale gray script. Norman Palmer, Table 14. I stood beside the seating chart in the front hall of the Millhouse Ballroom and checked it twice. The Daniels family filled the first 3 tables. Derek's friends were near the dance floor. Fred's business associates had seats along the windows facing the river. Table 14 was behind a wooden divider near the service doors. That was where they put the vendors. My name is Norman Palmer, and I'm 71 years old. Before I go on, what city are you listening from? A young woman wearing a headset hurried past me with 2 folded tablecloths. I knew her from previous events. Her name was Megan, and she worked for the florist. She noticed what I was looking at. Mr. Palmer, I think there might be a mistake. I don't think so. But this table is for staff, not exactly. Vendors who stay for dinner. She looked uncomfortable. There were 8 names under mine. The photographer, his assistant, the florist, 2 caterers, the disc jockey and his wife. A bakery owner named Colleen. Michelle Daniels had arranged the chart herself. I knew that because she'd told Terry Lopez, our property manager, not to let anyone change it without her approval. I heard Michelle before I saw her. The flowers in the front room are supposed to be white. She came around the divider carrying a clutch purse and a glass of sparkling water. Her dress was blue, with silver beads around the sleeves. She stopped when she saw me by the chart. "Oh, Norman, you found your table." I did. She gave me a tight little smile. "We had to make some adjustments. You know how weddings are. I've hosted a few." "Yes, of course. More than 1,000, actually." Michelle glanced toward the ballroom doors. Guests were beginning to arrive. She didn't want a conversation where anyone might hear it. "The family table's filled up," she said. "Kristen has a very large family. So do I." She pressed her lips together. "Derek said you wouldn't make a fuss. I'm not making one." That seemed to bother her more than if I had. Behind us, a catering cart rolled over the old maple floor. One wheel squeaked every few feet. I'd installed that floor with my wife, Teresa, more than 2 decades earlier. We'd pulled each board from an abandoned textile warehouse, removed the square nails, planed the edges, and laid the boards ourselves. Michelle didn't know that. Most people at the wedding didn't. To them, the Millhouse was a pretty building on the Wilmington riverfront. Exposed brick, tall windows, iron beams, and a view of the Christina River. It was somewhere people came to drink champagne and take pictures. To me, it was 39 years of my life. Michelle touched my arm. "Norman, today is about Derek and Kristen." "I know. So I hope you can just enjoy yourself." "I intend to." She walked away before I could ask what she thought I might do. I watched her cross the room and join Fred near the head table. Fred leaned close while she spoke. Then both of them looked at me. That was the moment they believed they'd finished pushing me out. They hadn't. By then, I knew things they didn't know I knew. I had documents they'd never seen. I also knew exactly what Teresa had insisted Ralph put into our trust 20 years earlier. The only question was how far Fred Daniels had gone. That question had been hanging over me for months. To explain how my son's wedding reached that point, I need to go back to an ordinary Tuesday morning when I found 3 assisted living pamphlets on my kitchen counter. I lived in the same brick house Teresa and I bought after we married in 1978. It was on a quiet street north of downtown Wilmington. Nothing grand, 3 bedrooms, a narrow driveway, and a detached garage that leaned slightly toward the alley. Teresa used to say the garage wasn't leaning. It was listening. After she died in 2021, I kept telling myself I'd straighten it. I never did. Every morning, I made coffee in the blue enamel pot she liked. I could have bought something faster. Derek gave me one of those machines with little plastic cups, but the coffee tasted burned to me. So, I used the pot. I poured 1 cup, opened the back door, and listened to the neighborhood wake up. Delivery trucks on Pennsylvania Avenue. A dog 2 houses over. Someone dragging a recycling bin across concrete. Then I went to work. I'd retired from the daily side of Palmer restoration and millwork, but retirement didn't stick. I still visited the shop 3 mornings a week. I checked special orders, sharpened tools nobody trusted themselves to sharpen, and annoyed the foreman by noticing things from across the room. On the other days, I went to the mill house. Terry Lopez managed it. She'd been with us for 16 years, first as an event coordinator, then assistant manager, then property manager. She knew which caterers paid late. She knew which window stuck in damp weather. She could tell by the sound of the furnace whether it needed attention. Terry didn't need me there. That was why I trusted her. I'd walk the building anyway. I checked the boiler room, the river doors, and the trim around the tall windows. Teresa had chosen that trim. She spent 3 weeks getting the profile right, because every catalog sample looked too new. People shouldn't walk in and think we fixed this place, she'd said. They should think somebody loved it enough not to give up. That was Teresa. She could make hard work sound simple. When we bought the old grain mill in 1987, Derek had just been born. The roof leaked. Half the windows were boarded. Pigeons lived in the upper room, and the city inspector told me tearing it down would cost less than saving it. Teresa walked through with a flashlight. She looked at the brick arches, the wood beams, and the river beyond the loading doors. "We can save it," she said. I asked, "With what money?" She pointed the flashlight at me. "I said we can save it. I didn't say this week. It took 16 years. I kept the restoration company running during the day. At night and on weekends, we worked on the mill. Derek grew up around sawdust, scaffolding, and coffee in paper cups. When he was old enough to carry lumber safely, he carried lumber. When he was older, he swept floors and complained about it. He was a good kid. That matters. It would be easy to tell you Derek had always been selfish. He wasn't. He called his mother every Sunday when he moved out. He came when the furnace quit. He remembered birthdays without being reminded. He also hated conflict. When Derek was faced with two upset people, he didn't ask who was right. He looked for the quickest way to make the noise stop. That weakness didn't seem dangerous when he was younger. Later, it did. The mill house opened in 2003. That same year, Teresa and I put the building into the Palmer Riverfront Trust. I was the trustee. Derek was the person meant to receive it after me. It wasn't a gift he could use while I was alive. It was a future interest, as Ralph explained it. Ralph Salinas had been our attorney for years, but he was also one of our oldest friends. He knew me before my beard turned gray. He knew Teresa before she learned to stop putting sugar in coffee. In 2006, a friend of ours nearly lost his cabinet shop after a relative tried to have him declared incapable of handling his affairs. The claim was false, but the damage was real. His accounts were frozen. Customers left. By the time the court sorted it out, the shop was barely alive. Teresa took it harder than I expected. She called Ralph and made an appointment. I still remember the three of us sitting in his old office on Market Street. Teresa had a yellow legal pad in front of her. "I don't want anyone using Norman's age against him someday," she said. Ralph looked over his glasses. "Anyone specific?" "No." She looked at me. "That's the point. You don't know who someone becomes when property is waiting." Ralph added a safeguard to the trust. If Derek, or anyone acting for him, brought a bad faith incompetency or guardianship case against me without a referral from one of my treating doctors, Derek's future claim to the mill house disappeared. The building would come back to me outright once Ralph confirmed what had happened and recorded the paperwork. It sounded severe. Teresa thought it sounded sensible. I understood that clause then. I understood it every year after. I just never expected to use it. For 20 years, it sat in the trust like a spare key in a kitchen drawer. Then Derek met Kristen Daniels. They met in 2019 at a fundraising dinner held at the mill house. Kristen worked in corporate communications. She was polished, quick, and good at remembering details about people. The first time Derek brought her to our house, she arrived with flowers for Teresa. Not grocery store flowers either. She brought the white peonies Teresa had used in the mill house front room. "I saw them in an old photograph," Kristen said. Teresa liked her immediately. So did I. Kristen asked about the mill. She listened while I explained how we repaired the south wall. She laughed at Derek's old stories. She cleared her plate without being asked. There were no warning bells. People always want warning bells afterward. Usually there aren't any. After Teresa died, Kristen checked on me more than Derek did. She brought soup. She sent reminders about appointments. She helped organize the papers on my dining room table. At first, I was grateful. Honestly, I almost thought of her as the daughter we never had. Derek proposed in 2023. The Daniels family held the engagement party at the Wilmington Country Club. I offered the mill house, but Kristen said her mother had already made arrangements. The country club is easier for Dad's clients, she told me. I didn't understand why Fred's clients needed to attend his daughter's engagement party. I didn't ask. The party was the first time I saw how the Daniels family worked as a unit. Fred held the room. Michelle controlled the details. Kristen moved between them, making sure each person heard what they wanted. Derek mostly smiled. Fred Daniels was 63 in the present year, but when we met, he looked younger than he was. He wore expensive suits and never seemed to sweat. His company was called Daniels Legacy Advisors. He didn't say he managed money. He said he guided families through transitions. At the engagement party, he introduced me to a group of men near the bar. "This is Norman Palmer," he said. "His family owns the mill house." I corrected him. "The trust owns it." Fred smiled. "Same difference." "No, it isn't." The men laughed because they thought I'd made a joke. Fred gave my shoulder a small squeeze. "You know what I mean." I did know. That was why I remembered it. Later, I found Derek outside by the valet stand. He was looking at his phone while guests waited for their cars. "You all right?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. It's a big party." He put his phone away. Kristen's parents went a little overboard. They seem proud of her. They are? He looked through the glass doors. Kristen was standing beside her father. Fred had one hand on her back while he spoke to another couple. Derek lowered his voice. "Dad, I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Would you be willing to help with the wedding?" I assumed I would. I mean, financially. I waited. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of his phone case. "Fred's covering a lot. He just thinks both families should contribute." "How much?" "We don't have a final number, then you don't have a question yet." He gave a nervous laugh. "Okay. Fair. Bring me a budget. Kristen's handling that, then she can bring it." His face tightened slightly. I'd embarrassed him without meaning to. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I'll help, Derek. I'm not writing a blank check, I know. And the mill house is available. No rental fee. That's huge, Dad." He hugged me then. It felt genuine. A week later, Kristen came to my house with a folder and a bottle of wine. She spread the wedding estimates across the kitchen table. Flowers cost more than my first truck. The photographer charged enough to replace my garage roof. Michelle wanted custom linens brought in from Philadelphia, though the mill house already had good linens. Kristen watched me read. "Dad has offered to manage the payments," she said. "Why?" "He does this all the time for clients. I'm not his client." "No, I know. It's just easier." "For whom?" She tucked her hair behind one ear. "For everyone." I agreed to put money into a joint wedding account. It would be used only for wedding expenses. Derek and I would both have access. I insisted on text alerts for every withdrawal. Kristen looked surprised. "You don't trust us?" "I trust a bank alert." "That isn't what I asked. It's my answer." She went quiet. Then she smiled and began stacking the estimates. "All right. Whatever makes you comfortable." At the time, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The first pamphlet appeared about 2 months later. I came home from the mill house and found it beside the coffee pot. The cover showed a silver-haired couple walking near a pond. Across the top, it said, "Independent living for your next chapter." I picked it up and checked the back. Brandywine Haven Senior Community. I assumed it was junk mail. I tossed it into the recycling bin. The next morning, it was back on the counter. That got my attention. I called Derek. "Did you leave something at my house?" "What kind of something?" "A senior living brochure." There was a pause. "Kristen might have." "Why?" "I don't know, Dad. You'd have to ask her." "Was she here?" "She dropped off some wedding papers yesterday." "She didn't tell me. She has a key." I looked toward the hook beside the kitchen door. Teresa had given Derek a spare years earlier. Apparently, Kristen had it now. "Did you give her my key?" "It's our key." "No, it's my key that I gave you." He sighed. "Okay, I gave it to her because she helps you." "I didn't ask her to." "She said you've been forgetting things." I stood very still. "What things?" "Appointments, bills." "I don't know." "Have I forgotten an appointment with you?" "No." "Have I missed a bill?" I said I don't know. "Then who said it?" Another pause. "Kristen's just worried." I looked at the pamphlet. She should have called. "Dad, it's a brochure. Don't turn it into something." That line stayed with me. I asked, "Did you read it?" "What?" "The brochure." "No." "Then you don't know what I'm turning it into." He ended the call by saying he had a meeting. That evening, Kristen came by. She knocked this time. I let her in but didn't offer coffee. She saw the brochure on the table. "I hope that didn't upset you." "Why would it?" She sat across from me. "It's not a nursing home. I can read. It's independent living. They have private cottages. You'd have less maintenance, and there are people around." "There are people around now." You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do. She folded her hands. Derek worries about you in this house alone. Derek told me you were worried. We both are. About what? She looked around my kitchen as if the answer might be on the walls. The stairs, your medications, driving at night. I take one cholesterol pill. I'm speaking generally, and I don't drive at night unless I need to. That's good. She said it the way someone might praise a patient for wearing socks. I leaned back. Why was the brochure in the recycling bin, then back on my counter? Her face changed for less than a second. I thought you threw it away without looking. I did look. Oh. She reached for it. I can take it. I put my hand over the pamphlet. I'll keep it. All right. She stood and picked up her purse. At the door, she turned. No one's trying to push you out, Norman. I hadn't said anyone was. After she left, I locked the door and removed the spare key from the hook, though that key no longer mattered. The next afternoon, I called a locksmith. Then I took the pamphlet from the kitchen table and photographed every page. 2 days later, another one arrived. This one was about in-home caregivers. The third advertised memory support services. None had come through the mail. There were no address labels. I photographed those too. I placed all 3 in a brown envelope and wrote the dates on the front. I didn't call Derek again. I wanted to know whether he understood what was happening. I also wanted to know whether Kristen was acting alone. The following Monday, I stopped at the mill house before lunch. Terry was in her office reviewing a catering contract. She looked up. You're early. I'm old. We wake up at dawn just to inconvenience everybody. She smiled. Coffee? Please. While she poured it, my phone buzzed. It was a text alert from the joint wedding account. A withdrawal had been made for $8,000. The description read, Daniel's Legacy Advisory Services. I showed Terry the screen. She frowned. What advisory services does a wedding need? That's a good question. I called Derek. He answered on the 4th ring. Hey, Dad, did you approve a payment to Fred's company? What payment? $8,000. I'm sure it's part of the planning. You're sure? Or, you know? He lowered his voice. I'm at work. So am I. I'll ask Kristen. The account requires both our approval for anything over $5,000. I thought you approved it. I didn't. He went quiet. Then he said, It's probably a bank mistake. The payment hadn't gone through. The alert had been asking for my authorization. Someone had expected me to tap yes without reading. I declined it. A minute later, Kristen called. She didn't say hello. Why did you reject Dad's fee? What fee? For managing the wedding funds. I never hired him. We discussed this. You suggested it. I said no. You agreed to the account. I agreed to help pay for the wedding. She breathed out slowly. Norman, Dad has already put hours into this. Then you should have asked what he charged. This is embarrassing. For whom? For Derek. I looked through Terry's office window at the ballroom floor. 2 employees were setting chairs for a retirement dinner. Put Derek on the phone. He's working. So am I. You don't have to be difficult about every little thing. $8,000 isn't a little thing. She softened her voice. This is what I'm talking about. You're getting overwhelmed. The wedding, the building, the accounts. Nobody expects you to keep carrying all of it. I stopped looking through the window. Who is nobody? What? You said nobody expects me to keep carrying all of it. Who have you discussed that with? She didn't answer. I heard a car horn on her end. Finally, she said, We'll talk later. She hung up. Terry had heard enough to understand. She set my coffee down. Do you want me to say what I'm thinking? Not yet. I called the bank and changed the account settings. No payment could leave without a code sent to my phone. Then I called Ralph Salinas. He answered from his office. Norman, you still owe me lunch. I'll buy it today. That sounds serious. Bring the Palmer Riverfront Trust. There was a pause. The full file? The full file. Is someone asking about the mill house? Not directly. What are they asking about? I looked at the 3 photographs on my phone. Senior living, caregivers, memory support. Then I looked at the rejected payment to Fred's firm. They're asking how much of my life they can manage without my permission. Ralph didn't make a joke. I can meet you at 1. Good. I ended the call and put the phone on Terry's desk. She watched me for a moment. What happens if they try to take control? I already know what happens. The old trust clause had never left my mind. Teresa had made sure of that. But a safeguard only mattered if someone was willing to cross the line that triggered it. At that point, I didn't know if Fred Daniels was careless, greedy, or simply too used to being obeyed. I was about to start finding out. Ralph arrived at the mill house carrying a leather case that was older than Derek. He found me in the small front room beside the ballroom. Teresa used to call it the quiet room. It had a fireplace, 6 armchairs, and windows facing Justice Street. Couples used it for private photographs before receptions. Ralph set the case on the table. "You look fine. That's your legal opinion. That's my opinion, as someone who's watched you eat chili dogs for 40 years. Terry brought in coffee and closed the door behind her. Ralph opened the case. Inside was a thick folder held together with 2 rubber bands. He removed the original trust document and the later amendment. I recognized both. Teresa's signature was on the final page of the amendment, directly above mine. Her handwriting leaned slightly forward. She always said upright letters looked unfriendly. Ralph turned to the section we wanted. "Still here?" he said. I knew it was. "Then why did I bring the file? I wanted to hear you say it." He read the important part aloud. The language was longer than I remembered. Legal language usually is. The meaning hadn't changed. If Derek, or someone acting for him, started a bad faith court proceeding to have me declared incompetent or placed under guardianship without support from one of my actual treating physicians, Derek lost his future interest in the mill house. Not part of it. All of it. The trust would release the building to me outright once Ralph filed an affidavit confirming the conditions had been met. Ralph tapped the paragraph with one finger. "This doesn't stop someone from filing a legitimate case. It shouldn't. And it doesn't react to brochures, rude conversations, or strange bank requests. I understand. It reacts to a filing." "I know." He studied me. "Has there been one?" "Not that I know of." "Has Derek threatened one?" "No." "Has Fred?" "No." "Then right now, we have people behaving badly. We don't have a trigger." Terry was standing near the fireplace with her arms folded. "What about the $8,000 payment?" Ralph looked at me. "What payment?" I showed him the alert and explained the joint account. He held out his hand for my phone. Ralph wore reading glasses but refused to admit he needed them. He moved the screen closer, then farther away. "Did you authorize this?" "No." "Did Derek?" "He says he didn't know about it." "Who created the payment? The account only shows the company name. Call the bank and ask. I already changed the approval settings. That's sensible. Now call and ask." He pushed the phone back. I called from the table. A representative named Celia verified my identity, then reviewed the attempted transfer. She said, "The request was initiated through the secondary account login." "Whose login is that?" "Derek Palmer." "Can you tell me where it came from?" "I can see that it was submitted through a browser, but I can't give you a physical location." "Was anything else changed?" She checked. "There was a request to add an authorized financial manager." "Who?" "I'm sorry, I need a moment." We waited. I could hear keys clicking. "The request name's Daniels Legacy Advisors." Ralph took out a pen. "When was that submitted?" I asked. "The same day as the payment." "Who approved it?" "It wasn't completed. The primary account holder needed to sign an authorization form." "Where was the form sent?" "To the mailing address on file." I gave her my address. She said, "That's correct." I hadn't received it. I asked her to cancel the request and place a note on the account. Only Derek or I could make changes. Nobody from Daniels Legacy Advisors was authorized to discuss it. After the call, Ralph wrote down the date and Celia's name. Terry said, "They tried to make Fred's company the manager." "Someone did," Ralph said. "Who else would do that?" He capped his pen. "We don't make the evidence stronger by overstating it." That was one reason Teresa trusted Ralph. He didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. He looked at me. "Does Kristen have access to Derek's bank login?" "I don't know." "Find out." "Ask Derek?" "Yes, he'll ask her." "That isn't necessarily bad. It gives her time to explain it away." Ralph leaned back. "What are you proposing?" "I'm not proposing anything. I'm deciding how much I say." He nodded once. That was the first deliberate decision I made. I wasn't going to accuse anyone, not yet. I was going to separate what I knew from what I suspected. I would write down dates, I would save messages. I would verify things before discussing them with Derek. Ralph tore a blank sheet from his pad and drew a line down the middle. On the left, he wrote facts. On the right, he wrote assumptions. Under facts, he listed the pamphlets, Kristen's access to my house, the attempted payment, and the request to add Fred's company. Under assumptions, he wrote that Fred directed it, Kristen submitted it, and Derek knew. You can't act on the right side as if it's the left, he said. I know. You'd be surprised how many intelligent people do. Terry pointed to the facts column. You forgot that someone took the bank form from Norman's mail. Ralph shook his head. We don't know it arrived. The bank sent it. The bank says it sent it. I looked at the list. My mail has been light. Terry glanced at me. How light? I haven't had an electric bill in 2 months. Maybe you switched to paperless billing. I didn't. Ralph uncapped his pen again. When did you last receive a bank statement? I thought about it. April. It was late June. The wedding was scheduled for September. Ralph added missing mail to the facts column, then crossed it out. Check first. I left the mill house and drove home. The mailbox stood beside the front steps. It was black metal with a brass flap Teresa polished twice a year. I opened it. Inside were 2 grocery flyers and an envelope addressed to someone 3 streets away. I carried them into the kitchen and called Delmarva Power. The representative told me my account had been switched to paperless statements in May. What email address is attached? She read an address I didn't recognize. It had my name, followed by a string of numbers. That isn't mine. The representative became careful. She asked me several security questions. Then she changed the email address back to my real one and added a verbal password to the account. I called the water company next. Same thing. Paperless billing had been activated in May. Different unfamiliar email address. My property insurance statements had been redirected too. That one bothered me most. The insurance company said the mailing preference had been changed through an online account. The person who made the change knew my policy number, date of birth, and the last 4 digits of my social security number. I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator. I wrote each company's name, the time of the call, and what had changed. Then I went upstairs to the small bedroom I used as an office. Teresa's metal file cabinet stood against the wall. The top drawer held utility bills, insurance records, and tax papers. I kept it locked, though the key hung in the desk drawer. The cabinet was still locked. Inside, the insurance folder was out of order. I arranged papers by date, newest in front. Teresa taught me that. Whoever had looked through them had put the oldest pages first. Nothing seemed missing. I took the key from the desk drawer and put it on my key ring. Then I checked the other files. The folder for the mill house was untouched. So were my medical records and the copies of the trust summaries. The full trust had never been in my house. Ralph kept the originals. That fact brought more relief than it should have. I went back downstairs and called the post office. After 20 minutes, I reached a supervisor named Mr. Hanley. He checked my address. There's no active forwarding order, he said. Has there been a hold? One moment, I heard him typing. Yes, there was a temporary hold requested in May. For how long? 10 days. Who picked up the mail? I can't see a name. It was collected at the Lancaster Avenue station. What identification was shown? I don't have that information in this system. I wrote down the station and the dates. Can another person collect held mail? With written authorization. I didn't authorize anyone. Then I recommend coming in with identification. We can add a pickup restriction. I drove there that afternoon. The lobby smelled like paper dust and wet cardboard. There were 5 people ahead of me. A ceiling fan turned slowly without helping. When I reached the counter, Mr. Hanley recognized my name. He was a broad man with a silver mustache. He took my driver's license and disappeared into the back. He returned with a photocopy. This was the authorization presented. My name was typed at the top. The signature at the bottom looked like mine if you had only seen it once. I had not signed it. The form authorized Kristen Daniels to collect mail for me. I asked, "Can I have that copy?" "I can give you a copy of the copy." "That's fine." He made another one and stamped the date on it. "Do you want to report the signature? I want a note added that nobody collects my mail except me." "We can do that." "Can you tell whether she collected it herself?" The clerk wrote K. Daniels on the pickup log. There it was. Not a suspicion. Not Fred's name on an account request. Not a conversation Derek could soften. Kristen had taken my mail after presenting a form I hadn't signed. Mr. Hanley watched my face. "Do you know this person?" "She's going to marry my son." He lowered his voice. Could there be a misunderstanding? There could. I folded the copy and put it in my shirt pocket. "That's why I'm going to ask her." I didn't call immediately. First, I drove to a small office supply store on Concord Pike. I bought a locking document box, 2 notebooks, clear plastic sleeves, and a scanner. At home, I placed the 3 pamphlets in sleeves. I added the bank alert, my notes from the utility calls, and the post office form. The scanner took longer to set up than it should have. The instructions were printed in letters small enough to punish anyone over 50. I scanned everything and saved copies on a new flash drive. Then I called Kristen. She answered brightly. "Hi, Norman. Did you collect my mail in May?" The brightness disappeared. "What?" "I'm at home. I have the post office form in front of me." "Oh, that. Yes, that." She was quiet for a moment. "You were getting overwhelmed. By my mail, you had stacks everywhere. I had one stack on the dining room table. It had bills in it, bills that were paid." She took a breath. "I was trying to simplify things." "Why didn't you ask?" "I did." "When?" "I don't remember the exact conversation. I would remember authorizing someone to take my mail. You said you wanted help." "With the wedding paperwork." "That's what most of it was." "No, it wasn't." She stopped. That small mistake told me she knew exactly what she had collected. I asked, "What did you do with the bank authorization form?" "What form?" "The one naming your father's company as financial manager." "I don't know anything about that." "The bank mailed it during the hold. Then it should be in the stack I brought over." "You didn't bring a stack over." "I gave it to Derek." "When?" "I don't know, Norman. It was weeks ago." I wrote her answer in the notebook while she spoke. She heard the pen. "Are you taking notes?" "Yes." "Why? Because you don't remember." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." Her voice sharpened. "You're making this into something ugly when I was helping you. You signed my name. I did not. The post office has the form. You probably signed it and forgot." I looked at the copy. There are moments when a conversation changes shape. You can hear it happen. Until then, Kristen had been defending her choices. Now she was laying the first stone under a different story. A story where I forgot. I asked, "Did Derek know you were collecting my mail?" "Yes." That answer came too quickly. "Was he with you at the post office?" "No." "Did he see the authorization?" "I'm not doing this." "You said he knew. He knew I was helping." "That isn't what I asked." She raised her voice. "Call your son if you want to interrogate someone." Then she hung up. I called Derek. He didn't answer. 5 minutes later, he sent a text. "In meeting? Is this urgent?" I replied. "Did you authorize Kristen to collect my mail in May?" The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. Finally, his answer came. "She said you asked her to." I wrote, "I didn't." He called immediately. "Dad, what's going on?" She used a signed form. "Okay, I didn't sign it," he sighed. "Are you sure?" I didn't answer right away. The silence made him uncomfortable. He said, "I'm not saying you're wrong. You asked if I'm sure of my own signature. I'm trying to understand. Ask Kristen where the bank form went." "What bank form?" "The one adding Fred's company to the wedding account." "Dad, I told you I'd handle that." "No, you told me you'd ask her." "I haven't had time." "Make time." He lowered his voice again. "I'm in the hallway at work. Then go back into your meeting. Don't do that." "Do what?" "Get cold and shut me out." I looked at the notebook. "You didn't know she had my mail, did you?" He didn't answer. That was an answer. I said, "Call me after you speak to her." He called that evening. By then, I'd changed the passwords on every account I could remember. Banking, utilities, insurance, the pharmacy. I also removed Derek as an emergency contact from the accounts where he didn't need to be one. I left him on my medical records. I wasn't ready to remove him from those. His voice sounded tired. "Kristen thought she had your permission." "She told you that?" "Yes." "Did she tell you she signed my name?" "She said the postal clerk told her where to sign." "That doesn't make sense." "She was trying to help." "Where is the bank form?" "She doesn't remember seeing it. She told me she gave it to you." He went silent. I waited. "Maybe she gave me a stack," he said. "Did she?" "I don't remember." There it was again. 3 people suddenly couldn't remember one missing document. I asked, "Did you submit the request to add Fred's company?" "No." "It came through your login." "Kristen uses my laptop. Does she know your banking password?" "She knows most of my passwords." I closed my eyes. Change them. Dad, change them. She's my fiancée. It's a joint account with my money in it. I'll talk to her. You already did. He sounded irritated now. What do you want me to say? The truth would save time. I am telling you the truth. You're telling me what she told you. What's the difference? I let that question sit between us. Derek realized what he'd said. That came out wrong. It came out honest. He began to apologize, but I stopped him. Don't apologize tonight. Find the form. I ended the call. Then I walked through the house, checking every window and door. Nothing was damaged. Nothing obvious was missing. In the upstairs office, I moved the trust summaries and property records into the locking box. I put the box in my truck. The next morning, I carried it into Ralph's office. He was standing beside his desk, reading the post office form. This isn't your signature. No. You're certain? Yes. Good. I looked at him. Good? Good that you're certain. Not good that it happened. He examined the form again. Did Kristen admit collecting the mail? She admitted collecting it. She denied signing. And Derek? He didn't know. You believe him? I believe he didn't know about the mail. I don't know what else he knows. Ralph placed the form beside the notes from my account calls. This has moved beyond rude behavior. I know. Do you want to confront Fred? No. Why not? Because I don't know his part yet. Ralph gave a slow nod. What do you want to do? I want every financial request involving my name sent to you. That can be arranged. I want the trust file checked. Every page. I checked it this morning. And that mattered. Fred and Kristen had seen only a summary because Derek had once asked Ralph for an overview of what he would inherit. They knew the mill house was held in trust. They knew Derek was the future beneficiary. They did not know the safeguard Teresa had added. I had no intention of educating them. Ralph sat down. Norman, paying attention is one thing. Waiting too long is another. I'm not waiting. What do you call this? Confirmation. Of what? That somebody is building a record of me needing help. He looked at the pamphlets, the altered accounts, and the false signature. That isn't proof of a court plan. No. But it's a pattern. Yes. For the first time, Ralph didn't argue with the word. He opened a drawer and removed a fresh legal pad. Then we document the pattern properly. He wrote the date at the top. That afternoon, I signed notices requiring written verification before anyone could discuss my property, accounts, or trust with a third party. Ralph kept copies. I kept copies. Terry received one for the mill house. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even a plan. It was a locked door. On Friday morning, someone tried the handle. I was in the mill house boiler room when Terry called my phone. Norman, there's a man in my office asking for the building's financial statements. Who is he? He says Fred sent him. Did he give a name? Martin Keene. He says he's reviewing assets for the wedding. I looked up at the old pressure gauge. Weddings don't require building statements. That's what I told him. What did he say? He said Derek will own the property soon anyway. The boiler clicked off behind me. I wiped my hand on a rag. Don't give him anything. I wasn't going to. Keep him there. What are you doing? I picked up my tool bag and headed for the stairs. I'm coming to meet the first person who's willing to say the quiet part out loud. Martin Keene was sitting across from Terry when I entered her office. He wore a tan suit and carried a slim black portfolio. A business card rested on the desk between them. He stood. Mr. Palmer, good to meet you. Is it? His hand stayed out for another second. Then he lowered it. I may have misunderstood the arrangement. What arrangement? He glanced at Terry. I was told your son had authority to provide certain information. My son isn't here. No, sir. Then who told you? Mr. Daniels. What information do you want? He opened the portfolio and removed a printed list. Annual revenue, operating expenses, current bookings, capital improvements, insurance coverage, and any existing liens. That's not wedding planning. No. Terry said you called it an asset review. That's how it was described to me. An asset review for whom? Martin looked at the list. I'm not comfortable discussing a client matter without authorization. You were comfortable asking for my records held by the trust. I'm the trustee. He put the list back into the portfolio. I understand. I don't think you do. His face reddened. Martin wasn't arrogant. He was embarrassed. Someone had sent him into a situation without giving him the whole truth. I picked up his card. Keen commercial valuation. You're an appraiser? Yes. What property were you asked to value? He hesitated. The Millhouse Ballroom. For a sale? I wasn't given a transaction type. For financing? That's possible. Who would borrow against it? He closed the portfolio. I think I should speak with Mr. Daniels. I think you should. He headed for the door. I said, leave the request. The list? Yes, I need that. Terry can make a copy. Martin looked at her. She already had the copier lid open. He allowed her to copy it. Before he left, I asked one more question. Did you believe Derek owned this building? Martin paused. I believed he had a beneficial interest. A future interest. That distinction wasn't made clear. It is now. He nodded and walked out. Terry waited until the front door closed. That wasn't subtle. No. Do you want me to call Ralph? I'll call him. She held out the copied list. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Target valuation, $4.6 million. I read it twice. The number was reasonable. I knew what the property was worth. What bothered me was that someone else had chosen a target before the appraisal happened. Terry pointed to it. Fred told him what answer he wanted. Maybe. You're still putting things in the assumption column for now. I folded the paper. Did Martin contact you directly? He emailed the general office account yesterday. I thought he was connected to the wedding, so I offered him 10 minutes this morning. Forward the email to Ralph. I already did. She turned back to the computer. There's something else. What? Kristen asked for an updated list of our preferred security companies. When? Last week. Why? She said Michelle wanted extra security for the reception. That's not unusual. No. But she also asked whether security could remove someone at the family's request. I looked at her. Someone specific? She didn't say. What did you tell her? That removal decisions go through me unless there's an emergency. How did she take that? She said, we'll see. Terry said it in Kristen's exact tone. I handed her the copied list. Don't change anything yet. You think the security question was about you? I think I don't know. That answer was becoming useful. It kept me from moving faster than the facts. I returned to the boiler room, but I didn't finish the repair. My concentration was gone. At noon, Fred called. His voice was warm. Norman, I hear we had a little mix-up. You sent an appraiser to the mill house. Martin does broader work than that. His card says commercial valuation. Fred laughed softly. Fair enough. Why did you send him? I'm helping Derek understand his financial future. His wedding is in September. My death isn't scheduled. That isn't what I meant. What did you mean? He paused. Fred was good at filling silence when he controlled it. He was less comfortable when someone else left it open. Finally, he said, Derek and Kristen are planning a family. They may want a larger house. It's normal to review long-term assets. The mill house isn't their asset. Not yet. It may never be. Another pause. Of course, he said. Anything can happen. His voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but now I could hear the work underneath it. I asked, why did Martin have a target valuation? He probably made an estimate. Before seeing the books, professionals do preliminary research. Then he doesn't need mine. Fred exhaled through his nose. You're taking this personally. It's my property. It's held for Derek, after me. No one's disputing that. You sent a man to dispute it with a calculator. Fred laughed again, but this time the sound stopped quickly. Let's not turn a harmless planning exercise into a family conflict. Then stop planning around my property. I ended the call. That evening, Derek came to my house. He didn't come inside at first. He stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets. Can we talk? I stepped aside. He walked into the kitchen and looked at the new lock on the back door. You changed it? Yes. You could have told me. You could have told me you gave my key away. He sat at the table. I remained standing. Fred said you were rude to one of his associates. He sent an appraiser to the mill house. Derek rubbed his face. He told me it was basic planning. For what? Our future. With my building? You put it in a trust for me. I put it in a trust after building it. I know. Do you? He looked toward the coffee pot. Can I get some coffee? It's 6 p.m. So? I made a fresh pot. That was what I did when conversations with Derek became difficult. I gave my hands work. He watched me measure the grounds. Kristen thinks you're angry about the wedding. I'm concerned about your judgment. That's worse. It should be. He leaned back. Fred handles complicated financial things. I thought it might help. Did you authorize the appraisal? I said he could look into options. What options? A mortgage, maybe. I turned from the counter. You can't mortgage a building you don't own. I know that. Then, what were you doing? Planning. The same word Fred used. I poured water into the pot. Did you ask when you'd have the right to borrow against it? Derek stared at the table. No. Did you ask me? No. Did you tell Martin you owned it? No. Did Fred? I don't know. The coffee began to drip. Derek said, "Why are you making everything sound criminal?" I didn't use that word. You're acting like Kristen forged checks and Fred tried to steal the building. Kristen signed my name on a postal form. She says she didn't. The form exists. Maybe the clerk misunderstood. That explanation came quickly. He stood. I knew this would happen. What? You'd decide you didn't like her. I do like her. No, you don't. I don't like what she did. You never give people any room. I looked at him. That accusation was so far from the truth that I didn't know where to start. For 5 years after Teresa died, I had allowed Kristen into my house, my papers, and my routines. I'd accepted her help because I believed it was offered kindly. Derek picked up his jacket. Fred wants us all to sit down. Then Fred can call me. He thinks you need a neutral person there, for a conversation about my property, for everything. What does everything include? Your stress, the house, the mill house, the wedding. He said the items like they were weights I'd dropped. I asked, who is the neutral person? I don't know. Some wellness consultant. That was the first time I heard the phrase. I thought it meant a family counselor. I was wrong. 2 weeks passed without another argument. The mail arrived normally. No more payments appeared. No strangers came to the mill house. I kept writing things down. I also tried to behave as if my entire family hadn't begun discussing my life in meetings I wasn't invited to. On the second Saturday in July, Kristen called at 9 in the morning. Are you home? Yes. Good. I'm bringing someone by. Who? His name is Sean. He helps families. I didn't agree to a meeting. It's free. That doesn't answer me. We're already on the way. She hung up. I called Ralph. He was at a hardware store. Do you want me there? He asked. No. I want to know what I'm looking at. Get the person's full name and employer. Don't sign anything. I know not to sign things. You also knew not to let Kristen collect your mail. That was unhelpful. It was meant to be memorable. I put my notebook on the kitchen table. Then I opened the blinds and waited. Kristen arrived 12 minutes later in a white sport utility vehicle. A man climbed out from the passenger side. He carried a brown messenger bag. Kristen used the front doorbell. She no longer had a key. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. Norman, this is Sean Rodriguez. Sean looked to be in his early 50s. He wore gray slacks and a blue shirt without a tie. Mr. Palmer, he said. Thank you for seeing me. I didn't agree to see you. Kristen's smile tightened. Can we not start like this? Sean held up one hand. It's all right. Mr. Palmer, I understand this was arranged quickly. Who arranged it? Your family? Which member? He glanced at Kristen. She answered. My dad's office. That widened the problem. Fred wasn't simply talking to Derek about future assets. His firm was now sending people to my home. I asked Sean, what kind of work do you do? I'm a geriatric wellness specialist. Are you a doctor? No. A nurse? No. Psychologist? No, sir. Then what is a geriatric wellness specialist? I assess how older adults are managing daily demands. I help families identify support needs. Who hired you? I believe we can discuss that inside. We can discuss it here. Kristen pushed past my shoulder. I'm not standing on the porch for this. She walked into the kitchen as though the new lock had changed nothing. Sean remained outside. That told me something about him. He understood a boundary when he saw one, even if the person paying him didn't. I stepped back. You can come in. He wiped his shoes and followed me. Kristen was already opening cabinets. Do you have tea? No. You always have tea. Teresa always had tea. She shut the cabinet. Sean placed his messenger bag beside the table. He sat where Ralph had sat weeks earlier. I remained on my feet. He said, this is meant to be informal. Then why did you bring forms? He looked at the bag. I carry standard materials. Who is paying you? Daniel's legacy advisors retained me. For what purpose? To conduct a wellness review. Of me? Yes. Did Derek approve this? Kristen answered. Derek knows. That wasn't the same as yes. I took out my phone and called him. He answered sleepily. Dad, are you aware Sean Rodriguez is in my kitchen? There was a pause. Kristen said someone might stop by. Did you approve a wellness review? I thought it was just a checkup. Sean isn't a doctor. Sean looked at the table. Derek said, Can you please cooperate for once? For once? I didn't mean it like that. Did Fred tell you this was free? Yeah, it isn't. His company hired Sean. Another pause. I didn't know that. Kristen reached for my phone. I moved it away. She said, This is ridiculous. Derek heard her. You're there? Obviously I'm here. They began talking to each other through my phone. I ended the call. Kristen stared at me. That was rude. So was arranging an evaluation without my consent. Sean spoke carefully. Mr. Palmer, you can decline. Thank you. Now, tell me what the review includes. He opened the messenger bag. Basic questions about daily activities, memory, medication management, financial tasks, driving, nutrition, and home safety. Do you write a report? Yes. Who receives it? The retaining firm. Not me. I can request that you receive a copy. Request from whom? My office. And does Daniel's Legacy Advisors decide how the report is used? Sean didn't answer immediately. In most cases, it's used to build a care plan. Most cases? Yes. What other cases? Kristen stood. We came here because we care about you. I looked at her. Then you can answer. Why does your father need a written report about my memory and finances? He doesn't need it. He hired Sean. He recommended him. Sean corrected her. His firm retained me. She turned on him. Is there a difference? Yes, I said. Sean reached into his bag and removed a clipboard. I want to be clear. I won't conduct an assessment without your consent. Good. But sometimes a short conversation can reduce concern. Whose concern? Your family's. I sat down across from him. I'll have a conversation. Kristen looked relieved. I continued. I won't take a test. I won't sign a release. You won't inspect my house. I want your business card and the name of whoever instructed you. Sean nodded. That's fair. He handed me his card. Then he took out a folded cover letter. The top carried the logo of Daniel's Legacy Advisors. The letter asked Sean to evaluate whether I could manage complex financial decisions without family assistance. It also asked him to note any resistance to support. I read that sentence twice. If I cooperated, they got an assessment. If I refused, they got resistance. That wasn't concern. It was a box built so every answer fit. I folded the letter and placed it beside my notebook. Kristen said, That belongs to Sean. He brought a copy for the subject of the review. Sean nodded. He can keep it. Her jaw tightened. I asked Sean, Did anyone tell you I'd missed payments? No. Gotten lost? No. Left the stove on? No. Had a medical diagnosis involving memory. Not that I was given. What were you given? He looked at Kristen, then back at me. Statements from family members. Which ones? I was told you'd become suspicious, withdrawn, and resistant to financial help. By whom? My contact was Fred Daniels. Kristen pushed her chair back. We're done. I didn't look at her. I asked Sean, Did Fred mention the Millhouse Ballroom? Sean's eyes shifted. Only slightly. But I saw it. He mentioned you manage a valuable property. Did he tell you his company tried to become manager of one of my accounts? No. Did he tell you he sent an appraiser to that property? No. Did he tell you his daughter used a false signature to collect my mail? Kristen stood so quickly the chair struck the wall. That is a lie. Sean closed his folder. I think we should stop. I agree. He placed the clipboard in his bag. I kept his card and the cover letter. At the door, he turned to me. Mr. Palmer, for what it's worth, you were never required to participate. Did Fred tell you I knew you were coming? Sean looked toward Kristen. No. After they left, I photographed the cover letter and called Ralph. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked, Did Sean perform any tests? No. Did you sign anything? No. Did he make observations? I'm sure he did. Then assume a report will exist. I looked out the front window. Kristen and Sean were still beside the vehicle. She was speaking with both hands. He wasn't saying much. What can they do with it? I asked. By itself, not much. By itself. That's the important part. Sean got into the passenger seat. Kristen remained outside and called someone. I couldn't hear her, but I knew from the way she turned away that she didn't want Sean hearing the conversation. Ralph said, "Bring me the letter today." "I will." "And Norman, yes? They've moved from managing your convenience to documenting your capacity. I noticed. This is where you stop assuming they'll become reasonable on their own." Kristen ended her call and looked directly at my front window. She couldn't see me behind the curtain. I watched her get into the vehicle. Then I picked up Sean's business card, turned it over, and found a handwritten billing reference on the back. DLA Special Review. Under that were Fred's initials. I took both items to Ralph's office before lunch. He read the cover letter without speaking. Then he turned Sean's card over and looked at the billing reference. "Do you recognize the initials?" I asked. "Fred Daniels." That was my conclusion. Ralph placed the card inside a clear evidence sleeve. "You're becoming organized. I had a good teacher." "Teresa?" "You." He smiled. "Teresa would be offended. She isn't here to hear it." The smile left his face. That still happened between us. One of us would say something ordinary, then remember. Ralph read the letter again. "This is written to create concern without making a direct claim." "How?" "It asks whether you can manage complex financial decisions. It doesn't say you can't. It asks Sean to note resistance, but it doesn't define resistance. It gives whoever reads the report room to interpret. So, it's useless, not useless. Weak. That isn't comforting. It isn't supposed to be." He took out his legal pad. "Did you tell Sean about the trust clause?" "No." "The appraisal?" "Yes." "Did he react?" "He didn't know about it." "Did Kristen?" "She knew enough to stop the conversation." Ralph wrote that down. I asked, "Can we get Sean's report? You can request it. Whether he has to give it to you depends on what he considers the document. He isn't your healthcare provider. He came into my house to assess me, which is why we'll request everything." He drafted a letter while I sat across from him. It asked Sean to preserve his notes, identify who retained him, and send me any report containing my personal information. Before I left, Ralph said, "Don't contact Fred about this." I wasn't planning to. That surprises me. I've asked him questions. He gives me words. What do you want instead? A reason? I returned to the mill house. The ballroom was being prepared for a 50th anniversary dinner. Terry stood on a ladder near the main doors, adjusting a brass wall light. "You pay people to do that," I said. "I called 3 people. None of them came. Then you need better people. I need fewer weddings in September." I held the ladder while she tightened the fixture. "Did Kristen call?" "Twice." "What did she want?" "First, she wanted to know if you'd spoken to me about Saturday. And the second time, she asked whether I'd noticed you forgetting things." Terry stopped turning the screwdriver. "What did you say?" "That you forgot to bring donuts last Thursday." "That was deliberate. I told her that too." She climbed down. "She asked if you'd made any unusual decisions involving the property." "What counts as unusual?" She wouldn't say. "Did she ask about the appraiser?" "No." Terry folded the ladder. I did some checking. I followed her into the office. Her desk held 3 printed emails. She put them in order by date. This one came to the events account in April. The sender worked for a valuation company in Dover. The message asked for square footage, annual event volume, and recent renovations. It said Daniels Legacy Advisors was conducting succession planning for the beneficial owner. I read the phrase twice. Beneficial owner. That's what caught me. Who answered? One of the coordinators. She sent our public event brochure and said financial questions had to come to me. Did they follow up? No. Terry gave me the second email. It had arrived in May from a firm in Philadelphia. The sender requested a private tour on behalf of an unnamed investment client. They wanted to know whether the mill house could be converted into mixed-use offices if event revenue declined. Did they visit? I said no. Why didn't you tell me? I thought it was a developer fishing for information. We get those. She handed me the third message. It was dated 3 days before Martin Keene appeared. This one came from a commercial lending broker. The subject line said, "Preliminary Collateral Review, Justison Street." The message asked whether an appraisal had already been completed. It also requested confirmation that the property would be free of trust restrictions after a pending family transition. I looked up. What pending transition? I don't know. Did you answer? No. I called the number. What did they say? The broker thought Daniel's legacy advisors represented the owner. Which owner? Derek. The room seemed quieter. Outside the office, the catering staff rolled glassware across the floor. I could hear each glass touch the next. I asked, "Did the broker mention a loan?" He wouldn't give me an amount, but there was a loan. He said they were evaluating collateral for a business facility. A business facility for Derek? He wouldn't say. I read the messages again. One appraiser might have been Fred getting ahead of himself. 3 separate contacts were different. The first called Derek the beneficial owner. The second explored alternate uses for the building. The third believed the trust restriction was about to disappear. That wasn't casual planning. Someone had been shopping the mill house. Terry sat at her desk. "There's more in the server logs. I thought you already checked." I checked recent mail. This morning I searched for Fred's company name. She turned the computer monitor toward me. There were 7 messages over 4 months. Most had gone to general accounts. One went to the private events coordinator. Another went to maintenance. Fred's name wasn't always visible. Sometimes the contacts said they were working through a family advisor. One message asked whether the roof had been replaced. Another requested the capacity of the electrical service. A third wanted flood insurance information because of the river. Those weren't questions for wedding planning. They were due diligence questions. "Print all of them," I said. "The attachments too? Everything." While the printer ran, I called Ralph. He answered, "You just left." I found the reason for the appraiser, which is, the mill house is being offered as future collateral. I explained the emails. Ralph didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Don't characterize it as offered yet. 3 firms were contacted. That proves they were asked for information. A lender asked about trust restrictions. That gets closer. Closer to what? An actual transaction." Terry handed me the first stack from the printer. I said, "The lender believes there's a pending family transition." Ralph was quiet. Then he asked, "Exactly what words did they use?" I read the message aloud. He said, "Send it to me. I'm bringing it." "Good." I also want Terry to write down every call she made. Dates, names, and what each person said. She can hear you. Terry leaned toward the phone. "I'll do it," Ralph continued. "Norman, has anyone asked you to resign as trustee?" "No." "Has anyone presented a document transferring title?" "No." "Have you signed anything involving the mill house in the last year?" "No." "Then the building cannot legally be used as collateral." "I know. The question is whether Fred knows. He sent 3 appraisers. That doesn't answer whether he understands the trust. Fred understood money. I couldn't believe he would shop a property without checking who controlled it. Then I remembered his words at the country club. Same difference. Maybe he truly thought a future interest and present ownership were the same thing. Maybe he thought I was a formality between Derek and the deed. Or maybe he expected me to stop being trustee soon. That was when Sean's visit changed meaning. The pamphlets had pointed toward moving me. The mail gave Kristen access to my accounts. The wellness review created a record about my capacity. The appraisals assigned a number to the mill house. Each act had looked separate while it happened. It wasn't separate. I asked Ralph, what would have to happen before Derek could control the trust? You'd have to die, resign, or become unable to serve. Unable according to whom? That depends on the circumstances. A court could appoint someone to manage your affairs. There it was. Not proof of a court plan, but the outline was clear enough. I looked at the email describing a pending family transition. "They're not planning for my future," I said. "They're planning for my removal." Terry's expression changed. Until then, I think she'd viewed Fred as a pushy advisor and Kristen as an intrusive future daughter-in-law. Now she understood what I understood. The property was the target. I asked her, "Who has access to our internal financial statements?" "You, me, the accountant, and the trust tax preparer." "Derek, no." "Keep it that way." "I will." "Also lock the basement records room. It's already locked. Change the code." She nodded. I carried the emails to Ralph's office. He arranged them by date across his conference table. April, May, June, July. Fred's interest had started before the senior living pamphlets appeared. That mattered. Concern for me hadn't led him to examine the building. The building had come first. Ralph circled the phrase pending family transition. "This is the strongest piece. Can we call the lender?" "You can. I'd rather write." "Why?" "People become careful on the telephone. A written response is harder to misunderstand." He drafted another letter. It stated that I remained the trustee and no transfer, resignation, or collateral authorization was pending. It demanded copies of any materials submitted using my name or the Millhouse address. We sent similar letters to all three firms. Then Ralph called the trust's accountant and confirmed no financial records had been released. When he hung up, I asked, "What aren't you saying?" He removed his glasses. "That someone may be representing you without authority." "Fred, probably. You can put that in the assumption column." "I just did." He pointed to the emails. "This is serious, Norman. But we still don't know what he told these firms or why he needs the valuation. He wants the building available. For what? That's the next question." By the following morning, 2 firms had replied. The Dover appraiser said the inquiry never became a formal engagement. The Philadelphia firm claimed client confidentiality and provided nothing. The commercial lending broker sent a shorter answer. Their preliminary review had been requested by Daniel's legacy advisors. They had received an estimated property value of $4.6 million and a summary stating that Derek's beneficial interest could become available for collateral after a change in trusteeship. Attached was a 1-page document. It wasn't part of our trust. It was a summary prepared on Daniel's legacy advisor's letterhead. The document described me as the current administrative trustee. Administrative. As if I kept records for the real owner. At the bottom, one sentence had been underlined. Expected transition before 4th quarter. The 4th quarter began in October. The wedding was in September. I called Derek and asked him to meet me at the Millhouse. He arrived after work wearing a blue dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Terry let us use the quiet room. I placed the Daniel summary on the table. "Have you seen this?" He read the first page. "No." "Look at the bottom." He read the underlined sentence. "What transition?" "That's what I'm asking." He shook his head. "I don't know. Did Fred tell you I was leaving the trust?" "No." "Did you tell him I was?" "Of course not." "Did you authorize him to seek financing against the Millhouse?" "I told you. I said he could explore options. This is more than exploring." He looked through the attached emails. His face slowly lost color. "I didn't know he contacted all these people." "How many did you think he contacted?" "1, maybe." "Why 1?" "For evaluation." "What did you need evaluation for?" He rubbed his forehead. "Fred said it was smart to know what the building was worth before the wedding." "Why before the wedding?" "I don't know. You didn't ask?" I trusted him. The words came out quietly. I sat across from him. "Did he ask you to sign anything?" "No." "Did Kristen?" "No." "Did either of them talk about changing trustees?" He started to answer, then stopped. "What?" Kristen asked. "Who would run the trust if something happened to you?" "When?" "A few months ago." "What did you say?" "That Ralph would know." "Did she ask about incapacity?" He looked at the papers again. "She asked what would happen if you couldn't make decisions." I waited. Derek said, "I thought she meant if you got sick." "Did she mention that conversation before Sean came to my house?" "No." "Did you?" "No." The distance between what Derek knew and what Kristen knew had become visible. He leaned forward. "Dad, I swear I didn't know about any transition. I believe you." Relief crossed his face. I continued. "That doesn't mean you're innocent in this." The relief disappeared. "You let Fred speak for you. You gave Kristen your passwords. You told them they could explore options involving something that isn't yours. It will be someday. Maybe." He stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means future property isn't present permission." He pushed back his chair. "Are you threatening to cut me out?" "No." "Then why say maybe?" "Because someone is telling lenders I'll be replaced before October. I didn't do that." "Then help me find out who did." He stood and paced toward the fireplace. "If I ask Kristen, she'll say I'm choosing you over her. This isn't a choice between people. It always feels like one. That's because you keep standing in the middle and calling it peace." He turned away. I gathered the papers. "Ask her one question. Ask why her father promised a change in trusteeship before October. And if she doesn't know, then she'll be as surprised as you." He left without promising anything. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen. The blue coffee pot was clean beside the stove. Teresa's chair remained tucked under the table. I kept it there, though nobody used it. I opened the cabinet above the refrigerator and took down a bottle of bourbon. I poured 1 glass. No ice. I carried it to the table and set the Daniels summary beside it. Expected transition before fourth quarter. I drank slowly while I read every page again. Until that night, I had been protecting my accounts and recording their behavior. That was no longer enough. Someone had put a deadline on removing me from control. I didn't know why the deadline mattered. I didn't know what Fred needed the building to secure, but I knew the wedding sat directly in the middle of his timetable. And I knew he believed I wouldn't be running the mill house when October arrived. The answer arrived the next morning from someone I hadn't expected. Martin Keene called Terry. He said he wanted to correct the record before his name became attached to a dispute. He also said he'd learned that Fred's request wasn't a normal estate planning review. Terry put him on speakerphone and called me into her office. Martin sounded less confident than he had in person. I was retained to provide a preliminary valuation, he said. The intended use was commercial financing. Financing for whom? I asked. Daniels Legacy Advisors. There was no need to put that in the assumption column. I asked, what did Fred tell you about the property? He said the current trust arrangement was temporary. Did he say I was resigning? He said a family transition was already underway. Did he use the word incapacity? Martin was quiet. Not with me. What words did he use? He said the present trustee was no longer expected to manage complex assets after September. Terry looked at me across the desk. Did he say who would replace me? Your son. Did he tell you Derek agreed? He referred to Mr. Palmer as his future son-in-law and the beneficial owner. Derek is already his future son-in-law. I understand that now. Martin explained that Fred had asked him to treat the mill house as likely available collateral. Fred wanted a value near $4.6 million because the lender needed enough property behind a loan of roughly $2 million. What kind of loan? I asked. A business credit facility. For operating expenses? I wasn't given the full application. Who was the lender? Martin hesitated. I'd prefer not to name them, Terry said. You sent the request to my office under false authority. I relied on information provided by my client. Then your client can deal with the consequences. Martin gave us the lender's name. It was a regional commercial bank with an office in Newark. After the call, Terry sat back. $2 million, roughly. What does Fred need $2 million for? I called Ralph. He told me to give him an hour. It took him 3. At 11:40, he called back. Come to my office. What did you find? Come here. His tone kept me from asking again. When I arrived, a court complaint lay open on his conference table. It had been filed in Newcastle County 3 months earlier. The plaintiff was a manufacturing company that had used Daniels Legacy Advisors to manage a reserve account. The complaint alleged that when the company requested its money, a large portion wasn't available. How much? I asked. Ralph pointed to a paragraph. $1,800,000. The exact wording was more careful. The company claimed a shortfall of approximately that amount, plus fees and losses. Fred's firm denied wrongdoing. I read the number again. That's the loan. Close enough. What happened to the money? The complaint doesn't prove what happened. What does it claim? That Daniels Legacy Advisors placed money into investments the client hadn't approved, then couldn't return the full balance when asked. Bad investments? Possibly. Poor records? Illiquid holdings? Fees? The complaint suggests several things. Did Fred take it? It doesn't say that. Ralph tapped the page. Stay with what we know. Daniels Legacy Advisors had a client demanding $1.8 million. Fred had been seeking a loan near $2 million. He had offered the mill house as future collateral without my knowledge. That was enough. Ralph turned to another document. This was filed last week. It was a motion asking the court to force Fred's firm to produce complete account records. The plaintiff claimed Daniels Legacy Advisors had delayed for months. What happens if Fred loses? I asked. He could owe the money. His firm could fail. There may be professional consequences. When is the next hearing? October. There was the deadline. The wedding was September 19th. The fourth quarter began less than 2 weeks later. Fred needed the building available before the court forced his books into the open. I sat down. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Ralph finally said, "The mill house is worth more than enough to support the loan he's seeking, if he controlled it." Yes. And he expects Derek to control it after September. That's what he told the appraisers. I looked at the court papers. The pamphlets hadn't been about my comfort. The mail hadn't been about simplifying bills. Sean's visit hadn't been about wellness. They needed a reason for me to stop controlling the trust. Fred needed that reason accepted before October. Once I was moved aside, Derek would be easier to manage. Derek already accepted Fred's advice without checking it. He'd already permitted an appraisal. Kristen knew his passwords. If Fred placed the loan papers in front of him after the wedding, Derek might sign before he understood what he was risking. I asked Ralph, would a lender really accept the mill house if Derek became trustee? Not automatically. They'd review the trust and find the clause. If they received the full document, Fred has only seen the summary. Correct. He thinks removing me gives Derek the building. He may think it gives Derek enough control to pledge it. He's wrong. Yes. That was the ugliest part. Fred was risking my independence and Derek's inheritance based on a trust he hadn't bothered to read. He wasn't protecting his daughter's future. He was trying to fill a hole in his own company. I asked, does Kristen know about the lawsuit? I don't know. She works in corporate communications. That doesn't mean her father shares his financial problems. It means she knows how to hide bad news. Ralph folded his hands. Don't let anger answer questions the evidence hasn't answered. I stood and walked to the window. Below us, traffic moved along Market Street. A delivery driver argued with someone over a parking space. What do you recommend? That we obtain the lender's materials. They won't give them to us. They might give us anything that uses your name or property. Then send the letter. I already did. I turned. You knew I'd say yes? I've known you a long time. My phone rang. Derek, I answered. His voice was low. I asked Kristen about the trustee change. What did she say? She said her dad was speaking generally. Did you show her the document? Yes. And? She got upset that Terry gave you private business papers. They were sent to the mill house. I know. I told her that. That was new. Derek had corrected her. I asked, did she know about the appraisers? She knew her dad had contacted some people. How many? She wouldn't say. Did you ask why September mattered? She said it was probably tied to the wedding. How? She didn't explain. I looked at Ralph. He could hear Derek's side through the phone. Did you ask about the lawsuit? I said. What lawsuit? So Derek didn't know. I told him the company name and the amount. He was silent long enough that I checked the phone. Finally, he said, that can't be right. It's a public court filing. Fred would have told us. Why? Because we're family. I didn't respond. He heard it too. I need to talk to Kristen. Do that in person. Why? Because people end phone calls when questions become uncomfortable. He said he'd call later. He didn't. That afternoon, the commercial bank answered Ralph's letter. They refused to provide Fred's complete application, but they confirmed 3 facts. Daniel's Legacy Advisors was the proposed borrower. The requested credit facility was $2 million. The Millhouse Ballroom at 411 Justison Street had been listed as proposed collateral, subject to a change in control expected before October. The bank also attached one page because it contained my name. At the top, Fred had written a heading, Transition Risk. Below that, he described me as an elderly widower, exhibiting increasing resistance to family assistance. He said a professional capacity review had been initiated. He also wrote that my son expected to assume control following the September wedding. Derek's signature was not on the page. Mine wasn't either, only Fred's. I read it without speaking. Ralph said, now we know why Sean was sent. He wasn't there to decide if I needed help. No. He was there to reduce the lender's risk. That appears to be the purpose. And the mail? Access, information, possibly documents, the pamphlets, to make the idea seem normal before they acted. Ralph didn't correct me. For once, the assumption column was nearly empty. Fred's firm had a $1.8 million shortfall and a court deadline in October. He needed about $2 million to keep the company standing and deal with the claim. The mill house was the only property close enough, valuable enough, and near enough to his family for him to imagine using it. The wedding gave him more than a date. After Kristen married Derek, Fred could call the mill house a family asset without anyone questioning the phrase. He had told lenders control would change after September. Sean's report would help explain why. There was still one missing piece. Fred couldn't remove me from the trust by writing a worried letter. He needed something official. I asked Ralph, what happens if Sean writes that I resisted the evaluation? Nothing by itself. What if Kristen says I forget things? Still not enough. What if Fred uses both? He could try to build a case. A court case, yes. The trust clause sat in the room between us, though neither of us needed to read it again. Fred didn't know it existed. I did. The question was no longer whether he wanted me out. The question was whether saving his company mattered enough for him to put that demand in front of a judge. Ralph opened the trust file again. This time, we didn't read it for reassurance. We read it to prepare. He placed the original 2006 amendment beside the bank's letter. Then he laid out the post office authorization, Sean's cover letter, the appraisal requests, and Fred's transition summary. Intent matters, he said. If Fred ever files, we need to show why. Because he wants a loan, yes. And because none of my doctors referred me for guardianship. That part is essential. I had the same primary doctor for 11 years. Her name was Elaine Mercer. I saw her twice a year, more often if something hurt long enough to annoy me. Ralph asked, "When was your last appointment?" "March." "Any concerns about memory?" "No." "Did she perform a screening?" "She asked me questions." "What kind?" "Date, location, 3 words to remember." "She asked me to draw a clock." "How did you do?" "I drew a clock." "That's not what I asked. It had the correct time." He wrote down Dr. Mercer's name. "I want you to see her again." "I don't need a doctor, I know." "Then why?" "Because Fred is arranging assessments through his own firm. We need a record from someone who actually treats you." I didn't like it. Not because I feared the appointment. I disliked being forced to prove something that hadn't been in question until strangers made it one. Ralph understood. He said, "This isn't about convincing me. I know. It also isn't surrender. I know that too." I called Dr. Mercer's office. The first available appointment was 3 weeks away. Ralph asked me to tell the scheduler it involved a possible guardianship claim. She put me on hold, then offered a cancellation the following Tuesday. Dr. Mercer entered the examination room, carrying my chart. She was a small woman with silver hair and red glasses. She sat on the rolling stool and looked at me over the frames. "Someone thinks you need a guardian? Someone may find it convenient." That wasn't my question. No treating doctor has suggested it. I know. I'm one of them. She checked my blood pressure, reviewed my medication, and asked about sleep, appetite, driving, and work. When I told her about the Millhouse appraisals, she held up a hand. "I'm evaluating your health, not the family dispute." Fair. She gave me a standard memory test. The questions were simple at first. Then she asked me to repeat a list of words, follow written instructions, subtract by intervals, and remember the words later. I missed one on the first attempt and got it when she gave me a category. She said, "That's normal. Put that in large print." She ignored me. Afterward, she reviewed the result. "There's no indication here that you lack decision-making capacity. Can you write that?" "I can write what I observed. I won't make a legal conclusion. That's all Ralph wants." She leaned back. "Do you feel unsafe at home?" "No." "Has anyone threatened you?" "No." "Taken money?" "They tried to add themselves to an account. The payment was blocked." "Entered your house without permission?" "Yes." "Taken your mail?" "Yes." She wrote those answers in my chart. Then she looked up. "You understand that what you're describing can be financial abuse." "I understand." "Do you want a referral to Adult Protective Services?" "Not now." "Why not?" "Because I'm protected, and I'm documenting it." She didn't argue, but she made me promise to call if anyone tried to isolate me, restrict my movement, or take control of my medical care. Before I left, she printed a visit summary. It stated that I arrived alone, provided an accurate history, understood my medications, managed my own affairs, and showed no sign of cognitive impairment requiring intervention. Ralph read it that afternoon. "This helps." "You sound disappointed. I'd be happier if nobody had made it necessary." He called Dr. Mercer's office while I sat there. With my permission, he asked one question. Had she or any clinician in her practice recommended a guardianship proceeding? Her answer was no. Ralph noted the date and time. Then he brought in a notary from the office across the hall. Her name was Denise Carter. I'd met her before at closings. She checked my identification and asked whether I understood the document Ralph had prepared. It was called a Capacity Reaffirmation Affidavit. The title made me sound like a bridge undergoing inspection. The document stated that I remained the acting trustee. I understood the trust, the Millhouse property, my accounts, and the consequences of my decisions. It listed the people who had recently tried to access my information. It also stated that I had not authorized Fred, Kristen, or Daniel's legacy advisors to act for me. Denise asked, "Are you signing this voluntarily?" "Yes." "Has anyone pressured you to sign?" "No." "Do you understand that this may be used in a court proceeding?" "Yes." I signed. She watched, checked the signature against my identification, and applied her seal. Ralph placed the original in the trust file. I kept a copy. "Is that enough?" I asked. "For this document, yes. For the clause, no single document is enough. The clause requires facts." He counted them on his fingers. "A proceeding must be initiated. It must challenge your competency or seek guardianship. It must be brought by Derek, a beneficiary, or someone acting for him. It must lack a referral from a treating physician. And I must determine the filing was made in bad faith. Fred's loan documents show bad faith. They help show financial motive. Sean's letter shows he arranged the evaluation. Yes. The post office form shows Kristen was gathering records. Yes. And Derek didn't authorize any court filing. That may matter to Derek. Under the trust, someone acting for a beneficiary can still trigger the clause. I knew that. Teresa had insisted on those words. Anyone acting for a beneficiary. She didn't want a relative avoiding the safeguard by sending someone else to court. I asked, "What if Fred files without telling Derek?" The clause can still apply if the filing is intended to advance Derek's control or claim, and Derek loses the remainder. Yes. Even after everything, I didn't enjoy hearing that. Derek had been weak. He had been careless. He had given Fred room to move, but he hadn't created the shortfall. He hadn't hired Sean. He hadn't told the lender I was incapable. Ralph saw my hesitation. You can't change the clause after a trigger just to protect Derek from the consequences. I'm not trying to. You're thinking about it. I'm his father, and you're the trustee. He let that settle. Then he pulled a fresh folder from his desk. Inside were draft documents. One was an affidavit for Ralph to sign if a petition was filed. It didn't claim a filing had happened. The important spaces remained blank. Another was a deed transfer instrument prepared for recording if the trust clause took effect. The legal description of the mill house filled half a page. Lot lines, parcel numbers, and old references going back before we bought the building. I ran my finger over the address, 411 Justison Street. Ralph said, "I ordered a title search. When?" "After the bank confirmed the collateral request." "Anything on it?" "No liens, no mortgages. Title remains in the trust." "Good." I also confirmed the amendment was validly executed and remains part of the trust. I knew it was. "You asked me to verify the lever. I'm verifying it." He had used my own word against me. We went through the steps slowly. If Fred stayed with pamphlets, evaluations, and family pressure, nothing changed. If he filed a real petition, Ralph would obtain the court-stamped copy. He would compare it with the trust requirements, speak to doctor. Mercer, review the evidence of motive, and sign the trigger affidavit if the conditions were satisfied. Then he would take the affidavit and deed instrument to the New Castle County Recorder of Deeds. Once recorded, the mill house would no longer sit in the trust for Derek. It would belong to me directly, not later, immediately. I asked, "How quickly can recording happen?" "Same day if we receive the petition early and the recorder accepts the documents. And if it happens during the wedding week, then I'll wear comfortable shoes." That was Ralph. He could discuss the loss of my son's inheritance, then complain about courthouse floors. I closed the folder. "Keep everything here. I plan to. Don't tell Derek about the clause." Ralph looked at me. He already received a trust summary years ago. The summary didn't include it. No. Then leave it that way. Why? Because if he warns Kristen, Fred won't file. Wouldn't that be a good result? For the building, maybe. For you? I need to know whether my son's new family will stop on their own. Ralph didn't like that answer. You don't need to let someone harm you just to confirm their intention. I'm not letting them harm me. You're allowing them room. I'm watching the line. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Teresa wrote that protection because she wanted you safe. And I am safe. Don't confuse having a remedy with being untouchable. I nodded. He was right. That afternoon, we added one more protection. Any attempt to change trustees, request trust records, or use the mill house in a financing package would be reported directly to Ralph and me. Terry received the same instruction. The accountant did too. 2 days later, Sean answered Ralph's request. He sent a copy of his notes and a short report. It said I had declined formal testing and appeared guarded about family assistance. It also said I was oriented, articulate, aware of my finances, and able to explain the purpose of the visit. Most importantly, it stated that Sean had not reached a conclusion about incapacity. Ralph placed it behind Dr. Mercer's summary. They can still quote the part about resistance, I said. They can. And ignore the rest. They can try. He closed the trust file and locked it in a cabinet. The proof was now in one place: Fred's financial motive, Kristen's access to my mail, the appraisal requests, the lender's collateral sheet, Sean's instructions and actual report, Dr. Mercer's findings, my notarized affidavit, the original trust amendment. Nothing had been used against anyone. Nothing had been announced. The deed remained where it had been since 2003. All Fred had to do was leave it there. The family meeting was called the Monday before the wedding. Fred chose the time and place. 6 o'clock at my house. He informed me through a group text that included Derek, Kristen, and Michelle. Family meeting to finalize wedding responsibilities and discuss Norman's support plan. I replied with one sentence. There is no support plan. Fred answered immediately. That is why we need to meet. They arrived together. Derek drove his own car, but he parked behind Fred's vehicle. I noticed that because it meant he couldn't leave until Fred did. We sat in the living room. Fred took the armchair nearest the fireplace. Michelle and Kristen sat on the couch. Derek remained standing until Kristen told him to sit. I chose Teresa's chair. Fred placed a blue folder on the coffee table. Norman, nobody wants an argument, then don't start one. Kristen looked at Derek. He said, Dad, please. Fred opened the folder. We're concerned that recent stress is affecting your judgment. What recent stress? The wedding, managing the mill house, living alone. I've managed all three. You've become suspicious of people who took my mail. Kristen shook her head. We've been over that. No. You changed your explanation. I was helping you. Michelle spoke for the first time. Can we stop attacking Kristen? I asked her one question. This is exactly what Fred means, Michelle said. Fred raised a calming hand. The purpose tonight is to find a practical arrangement. He removed a document. It was a proposed trustee resignation. My name was already typed beneath the signature line. Derek's name appeared as successor trustee. I picked it up. You prepared this? My attorney did. Why? To make the transition easier. What transition? Fred smiled as if I were proving his point. We've discussed this. No, you've described it to lenders. Derek looked at Fred. What lenders? Fred ignored him. He spoke to me. The mill house requires active management. Terry manages it. The ownership structure is unnecessarily complicated. It wasn't complicated until you tried to borrow against it. Michelle leaned forward. Nobody is trying to take anything from you. Then why is my resignation typed? Fred placed another page on the table. It authorized Daniel's legacy advisors to review trust assets and arrange financing for family purposes. The amount line was blank. I asked Derek, have you seen this? No, Kristen said. We were going to explain. To whom? To both of you? Derek picked up the paper. What financing? Fred shifted toward him. A temporary business facility. It would create flexibility for the family. Your business? Derek asked. Several connected matters. The lawsuit? Fred's face changed. Not much. Enough. You've been discussing my company with Norman? Norman showed me the filing. Kristen turned to me. You had no right. It's a public record. You're trying to poison Derek against my father during our wedding week. I looked at Derek. Did it work? He didn't answer. Fred closed the folder halfway. This is becoming unproductive. It started that way. He leaned back. Norman, Sean's report describes you as resistant. It also says, I'm capable. It says you refused testing. I saw my doctor. Fred's eyes moved to me. That was information he didn't have. What doctor? My doctor. Did she perform a full evaluation? She performed the evaluation she considered appropriate. Kristen said, Why didn't you tell us? Because my medical care is mine. Fred's voice hardened. We are trying to avoid an unpleasant legal process. The room went quiet. Derek looked at him. What legal process? Fred reopened the folder. If Norman refuses reasonable support, the family has options. What options? Derek asked. Court-supervised assistance. Derek stared at him. You mean guardianship? Only if necessary. I never agreed to that. Nobody said you did. The trust clause passed through my mind. Anyone acting for a beneficiary. Fred still didn't know. I asked, who is the family in your sentence? He looked at Kristen, then Derek. People with a direct interest in Norman's well-being. And the mill house. That property is part of the concern. There it is. Fred stood. You're proving that private cooperation isn't possible. I remained seated. Take your papers. He gathered the folder. The resignation stayed on the table. I held it out. He didn't take it. Keep it, he said. Think about what you're risking. After they left, Derek remained in the driveway. Fred had to move his vehicle before Derek could back out. For a moment, Derek looked toward the house. I thought he might return. He didn't. The next morning, the wedding account sent an alert. Someone had attempted to move $46,000 into an account controlled by Daniel's legacy advisors. The request came through Derek's login. I denied it. Then I transferred my remaining wedding contribution into a restricted account that paid approved vendors directly. Derek could still see every payment. Nobody could redirect the balance. He called within 10 minutes. Dad, did you lock the account? I protected it. Kristen says the caterer won't get paid. The caterer was paid yesterday. What about the florist? Scheduled for Friday. She says you're trying to sabotage the wedding. I'm paying the bills I agreed to pay. What was the $46,000 for? He didn't answer. Did you request it? I asked. No. Then change your password. I did. When? After we talked. Change it again. He was quiet. Fred says you're forcing him to protect the family. From what? You? That word sounded painful to him. It didn't sound natural. I asked, do you believe that? I don't know what to believe. Start with what you've seen. He ended the call without saying goodbye. The next 2 days were quiet, too quiet. On Thursday, Kristen sent me the wedding schedule. My name appeared only once. Father of groom arrives at 5:30. No photographs, no family procession, no speech. I didn't object. On Friday morning, I dressed in the gray suit Teresa had chosen for our last anniversary dinner. At 8:12, Ralph called. His voice was flat. It landed. I sat on the edge of the bed. What landed? A petition in Chancery Court, filed electronically this morning. Who filed it? Fred's attorney. Fred is listed as the interested family representative. Derek, named as your son and trust beneficiary, he did not sign. What are they asking for? Emergency temporary guardianship over property and finances. They claim you're moving money irrationally and obstructing necessary care. The money I moved to pay the wedding vendors, yes. Treating physician referral, none. Sean's report. They attached selected pages. Did they include the part saying he reached no conclusion? No. I looked at Teresa's photograph on the dresser. Does it trigger? I need to finish the review. That wasn't my question. Yes, Ralph said. Based on what I have, it triggers. I stood. What do you need from me? Nothing. Go to the wedding. Ralph. I have the court-stamped petition. Dr. Mercer has confirmed she made no referral. I'm signing my affidavit now. And the deed? Terry is bringing the property file. We'll handle it. I understood what handle it meant. Years of paperwork had reached one Friday morning. Fred had crossed the line. I asked, does Derek know? Not unless Fred told him. He didn't. How can you be sure? Because Derek would have called. Ralph told me he would meet me at the mill house later. He didn't say when. I finished dressing. At 5:28, I arrived on Justison Street. The mill house windows reflected the river. Valets stood beneath the front awning. Guests gathered near the entrance while a photographer arranged Kristen's family on the brick steps. Derek was inside. Kristen saw me from the steps and looked away. Michelle met me in the front hall. She handed me a small envelope containing my place card. Your table is listed on the chart. Thank you. She studied my face. You seem calm. Shouldn't I be? I just expected today might be difficult for you. Why? She adjusted the bracelet on her wrist. With all the changes. She walked away before I could ask which changes she meant. I approached the seating chart. Norman Palmer, table 14, behind the divider near the service doors. The florist was already seated. The disc jockey's wife was helping the bakery owner remove plastic wrap from a plate of rolls. Megan looked up. Mr. Palmer, I think there might be a mistake. I don't think so. Michelle found me beside the chart and explained that the family tables had filled. She reminded me the day was about Derek and Kristen. Then she left to join Fred at the head table. I carried my place card behind the divider. The other people at table 14 shifted awkwardly when they saw me. The photographer stood. "Mr. Palmer, you can take my chair." "I have one." I pulled it out and sat down. From there, I could see the old iron beams, the maple floor, and the head table beneath Teresa's restored windows. Fred was laughing with two men from his industry. Kristen sat beside Derek. Derek looked across the ballroom and found me behind the divider. His smile disappeared. He started to rise. Kristen put her hand on his arm. He stayed where he was. I unfolded my napkin and placed it across my lap. Then the ballroom doors opened, and Ralph Salinas walked in carrying a recorder's envelope. He didn't look toward the head table. He came directly to me. Terry entered behind him carrying the Millhouse property file. She had changed from her office clothes into a dark green dress, but she still wore her building keys at her waist. Ralph placed the envelope on the table. "It's done," he said. "Recorded at 2:17. I checked the clock above the ballroom doors. 6:43. Dinner service had begun. Fred was still laughing with his associates. Michelle was directing a server to move a wine bottle. Kristen leaned close to Derek and whispered something. Derek kept looking at me. I asked Ralph, "Does the petition name Fred on every relevant page and the bank materials?" "Attached to my affidavit," Terry said. "The lender's regional director is sitting at table 3. I looked toward Fred's guests. He hadn't only invited friends. He'd invited the people he expected to impress after gaining control. "Did you arrange this?" Ralph asked. "The seating?" He nodded toward table 14. "No." Terry looked at the chart. Her mouth tightened. "That's why Michelle wouldn't let me see it." The disc jockey tapped his microphone. Kristen and Derek were about to be introduced. Ralph rested one hand on the recorder's envelope. "We can wait until tomorrow." "No. This will change the wedding." Fred filed today because he thought the wedding would protect him from questions. Terry asked, "What do you want us to do?" "Tell the truth, then let dinner continue." She spoke briefly with the disc jockey. He looked toward Kristen, then he looked at me. Terry took the microphone. "Before we introduce the couple, there's an urgent property announcement concerning this venue." The room settled slowly. Fred stood. "This can wait." Terry looked at him. "No, it can't." Ralph walked to the center of the dance floor carrying the envelope. He didn't raise his voice. "My name is Ralph Salinas. I'm counsel for the Palmer Riverfront Trust and for Norman Palmer." Derek stood beside Kristen. Ralph continued. "At 8:12 this morning, Norman was named in an emergency guardianship petition filed in Delaware Chancery Court." A murmur moved through the room. Derek looked at Fred. "What petition?" Fred's face went still. Kristen grabbed Derek's hand. "Not now." He pulled away. "You knew?" Ralph held up the court-stamped copy. The petition was brought through counsel acting for Fred Daniels. It seeks control of Norman's property and finances. It relies on a private wellness visit retained by Daniels' legacy advisors. Sean's cover letter was in the affidavit package. So were the missing pages of his report. Ralph explained it plainly. The evaluator did not find Norman incapable. Norman's treating physician found no reason for guardianship and made no referral. Evidence gathered before today shows the petition was connected to efforts to use this building as collateral for a loan benefiting Daniels' legacy advisors. One of Fred's associates stopped smiling. The man from the bank pushed his chair back. Fred stepped onto the dance floor. "This is defamatory." Ralph turned toward him. "It's in your filed petition and your bank application. That information is confidential. You place Norman's property in medical capacity before a court." Derek came down from the head table. "You filed this without telling me?" Fred raised both hands. "I acted to protect the family." "From my father?" "From his increasingly irrational decisions." Norman's increasingly irrational decisions. He said it while standing on a floor I'd laid by hand. Ralph opened the recorder's envelope. In 2006, the Palmer Riverfront Trust was amended. The amendment states that any bad faith guardianship proceeding brought by a beneficiary or anyone acting for that beneficiary without a treating physician's referral causes immediate forfeiture of the beneficiary's remainder interest in this property. Kristen stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means Fred's filing triggered the clause this morning." "No," Fred said. Derek never filed anything. The clause includes anyone acting for him. You can't do this during my daughter's wedding. Ralph removed the recorded instrument. The Newcastle County Recorder of Deeds accepted the transfer at 2:17 this afternoon. The trust no longer owns 411 Justison Street. Derek no longer holds a future claim to it. He turned toward me. The deed vested outright in Norman Palmer. Nobody spoke. That was exactly what happened. Fred's banker stood and left the table. Fred saw him go. "Wait," he said. The man didn't stop. Kristen looked from Ralph to me. "You planned this." "No," I said. "Your father filed the petition. You let him. I asked him to leave my property alone." Fred came toward me. "You've destroyed my company over a technicality. Your company needed my building because $1.8 million of a client's money wasn't available." Several people at Fred's tables heard that. Michelle covered her mouth. Fred stopped moving. I said, "You had pamphlets left in my house. Kristen took my mail. Your firm tried to enter my bank account. You sent Sean to create a capacity report. Then you told lenders I'd be removed before October." Kristen looked at the floor. Derek looked at her. "You took his mail?" "I was helping." "You told me he asked you." "He did." "No," I said, "I didn't." Derek stepped away from her. Fred pointed toward Ralph. "This isn't finished." Ralph returned the deed to its envelope. "The court case isn't finished. The ownership question is." The room remained silent. I looked at Terry. "Is dinner ready?" "The first course is waiting." "Then serve it." Kristen stared at me. "People came to see you get married. I'm not sending them home hungry." I told the disc jockey to make the introduction. He hesitated, then raised the microphone. Music began. It sounded awkward at first. Then Derek and Kristen walked onto the floor because 200 people were watching. I returned to table 14. The photographer asked, "Are you sure you want to sit here?" "I'm already seated." Dinner continued. Nobody forgot what had happened, but the caterers served the food, the band played, and the cake was cut. Fred left before dessert. His associates did not follow him. 3 days later, his attorney withdrew the emergency request. The court still reviewed how the petition had been prepared. Ralph handled that. The bank closed Fred's loan application. Without the mill house as collateral, there was no facility. The lawsuit against Daniel's legacy advisors continued. Within 2 months, Fred's firm stopped taking new clients and entered a supervised wind-down. What happened to the missing money was settled through that process. I didn't attend any hearing involving Fred. He never apologized. Neither did Kristen. She sent one message accusing me of humiliating her family. I saved it with the others and didn't answer. Derek came to my house the Sunday after the wedding. He waited on the porch until I opened the door. "Can I come in?" "Yes." We sat at the kitchen table. He looked older than he had a week earlier. "I didn't know about the petition." "I believe you. I should have known." "Yes." He rubbed both hands over his face. I kept thinking if I agreed with Kristen, things would stay calm. They stayed quiet for you. He looked at Teresa's chair. "I lost the mill house. You nearly helped them take it from me." "I know." He asked if the trust could be changed back. "No." He nodded slowly. "I figured." He didn't ask again. That mattered. I told him I wasn't ready to trust him with accounts, keys, property, or medical decisions. "What can I do?" he asked. "Start telling the truth when it costs you something." He began with small things. He gave me every message Fred and Kristen had sent about the mill house. He changed his passwords. He signed a statement confirming he never approved the guardianship petition. He also began coming to the ballroom on Saturday mornings. Terry put him to work checking chairs, replacing damaged trim, and carrying supply boxes. I didn't promise him the building. I still haven't. As for Kristen, Derek remained married to her while they decided what their marriage actually was without Fred directing it. That was Derek's decision. She was no longer welcome in my house or involved in my affairs. There was no family dinner where everyone cried and forgave each other. Some damage needs time before you know whether it can be repaired. That winter, I renamed the quiet room. A local sign maker carved the letters into walnut from our old shop. The Teresa Palmer room. Derek helped me mount it above the door. We stood back and checked whether it was level. "It's a little low on the right," he said. "It is." He adjusted it without arguing. Through the doorway, afternoon light crossed the chairs and reached the restored fireplace. Teresa's windows faced Justison Street, just as they always had. She once told me people shouldn't enter that building and think we fixed it. They should think someone loved it enough not to give up. I understand that better now. Love doesn't require surrendering your judgment. Dignity doesn't require staying silent forever. Sometimes the quietest answer is simply keeping the papers that prove what belongs to you. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and tell me whether you would have let the wedding continue.